Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Let's get right into it. In this video, I'll be explaining all the config settings there are. If you still want to read up after the video, you can do that by clicking on the GitHub page or by clicking on the Spigot page. I recommend the GitHub page since there's more information there. So, first off, as you may have seen at the def and player hit, you can set negative numbers. There may be times where you'd like to add or remove a certain amount of affinity from the players. I've given you this freedom because I think this can create more interesting gameplay changes and also gives you all the freedom you want like these spoiled teenagers you are. Points per minute. Adds a certain amount of affinity every minute to all online players. Block's mined is used when a certain block that has been added to the config is mined. Player hit is activated when a player is hit by a mob. It will not activate if a player is hit by another player. PvP kill will give you affinity points when you kill another player. And PvE kill will give you affinity points if you kill a certain player that is in the config file. There's also the def setting, which will give you points when you die. Starting affinity is the affinity that a player receives when he or she joins the server for the first time after installing dynamic difficulty. Min and max affinity are used to set a max for the player. No player can get lower or higher than what's given here, even with commands. I added this because you wouldn't want a player to have 10 million points or negative 10 million points and be stuck forever in a certain difficulty. Mobs count as PvP. Kind of a mouthful, isn't it? These are all the mobs that will give the points from the PvE kill setting. You can also set custom affinity amounts per mob. Some mobs may be a little harder to kill, so more points should be rewarded to them. You can go to the Spigot link if you want to add more mobs to this list. Any mob will do, even a cow. Then the block section are the blocks that will give points from the block mine setting. You can also set a custom affinity if you think they deserve more from mining a specific block. And Silk Touch allows decides if you get points or not when mining blocks with the Silk Touch enchantment. Plugin support. Dynamic difficulty has placeholder support. You can enable and disable it here. The commands are on GitHub, Spigot, and 3 videos from this one. In the future there may be some more plugins I will add, but as of this moment I have nothing planned yet. Allow B-stats allows you to disable B-stats only for dynamic difficulty. If B-stats is disabled on the server, you can't enable it here. Use prefix is used when you call one of the placeholder APIs. It returns the custom given prefixes when applicable. You can set these prefixes yourself in the difficulty section. Saving data. You can choose here to connect to a certain database. I personally recommend SQLite because you don't have to do anything and because it's a little better than file saving method. The only downside of SQLite is that you can't really edit these easily with an editor like Notepad++. 2 videos from now will explain how to connect to some of the databases and why certain databases are preferred over others. The mobs inside of disabled mobs won't be altered by the plugin. The only exceptions are effects when attacked and mobs ignored section from the difficulty settings. In the difficulty modifiers tab, you can change a few settings about the difficulties. You have 2 types of difficulties, world and player based. The difficulty will be different for all players if you use the player type, and the difficulty will be the same for all players if you use the world tab. The randomize function does exactly what it says. It randomizes the settings of all the difficulties for all players. It doesn't use weight, so all the difficulties have the same chance to come up. Exact percentage may be a bit hard to explain. It calculates the exact percentage between 2 difficulties. Let's say you have 2 difficulties, easy and hard. Easy gives you 10 XP and hard gives you 20 XP. If you're halfway up to the hard difficulty, it will give you 15 XP if exact percentage is turned on, but will always give you 10 XP until you reach hard if the exact percentage is off. Beneath the exact percentage are setting multipliers. These are easy to change multipliers if you have a lot of difficulties. I also forgot to mention the disabled worlds settings. You can disable certain worlds and none of the dynamic difficulty settings will work in there, except for placeholder API and the commands, of course. And the last step, difficulties. The Affinity required decides when a player joins a new difficulty. It uses Affinity to decide this. Damage done by mobs and damage done on mobs are calculated with percentages. If you normally hit for 4 hearts and damage done is on 200%, you'll do 8 hearts of damage now. The experience multiplier also works with percentages. Just don't go too low or it will remove all the XP dropped. Double loot chance is also calculated with percentages. If you want mobs to drop more loot, you can use this so they drop double the loot. This won't work on disabled mobs and with mobs that can pick up items. Effects when attacked decides if the player that is hit or poisoned by a mob will get a negative potion effect. These effects won't cancel if another player throws a potion and if it's consumed yourself. Prefixes will be used when placeholder API calls for it and if it's enabled in the use prefix setting. It will send the difficulty name if it's disabled. And the last item is the mobs ignore player setting. These mobs will not attack any players unless the player provokes the mobs, or if they are no longer in the chosen difficulty. I'll show you in the next video how to make a custom difficulty. Thanks for watching.